welcome to another episode of A Blind Insight. It's been a few weeks, a lot's happened, and we'll have a chinwag about some of it and throw in a bit of music as always. I'm Simon Hill and joined by Billy Spakeman. How you been?
How we doing? Not too bad. Not too bad. Coming up to the festival season and stuff, so busy. And when does this go? Oh yeah, this will go out before our Mammoth football game on Sunday, June the 1st. That'll be exciting, really. And into territory that we haven't explored because we're playing Russell's Hall Hospital this year.
All right.
Tividale Football Club. 2:30 on Sunday. So it's if anybody's not doing anything, come down. It's free in. We just got the bucket and you just make a donation. All goes to our charities this year. And we've got about, what should I say? Andy Smith from the Crafty Jar is our manager, our pep, or our slot, whatever you call him. And we've got about 21 players of various abilities, let's just say.
And various ages.
And various ages. Yeah, I think the youngest is 16 and the oldest is 73. So we'll see how we go.
Yeah, just make sure you... Well, I suppose if there is any injuries, you'll have plenty of medical help on hand anyway.
Well, yeah, yeah. It wasn't the reason why we played them, but it's a good... Yeah, I hadn't thought of that. It's a good idea, yeah.
Well, hopefully the weather behaves itself, and that's a good afternoon's entertainment. So
it was good last year. We played Sands, and it was really entertaining.
I can't believe that was a year ago. I remember talking about that.
Two problems we've had this year. One, our superb goalkeeper from last year had to pull out at the last minute because his partner had been working in France all year and is coming back has come back now and booked a special holiday for him this weekend. So we had a bit of a panic then, but I managed to find a goalkeeper who played his last game last week. And then to try and get a registered ref now, because the FA rules have changed, it's just an absolute minefield. Forms you got to fill in. They've got to get clearance from the FA because it's not an FA game. And we managed in the end right at the last minute, so...
Should be good. Right. So all systems go there.
All systems go, yeah.
So what we're going to talk about today? Well, since we were last here, I've been on a holiday to Italy.
Oh wow!
Finally, after wanting to go there for a long time, and included visits to the Ferrari and Lamborghini factories, and so I'll let you know how all that went and my thoughts on that, and my first impression of Italy, and also. Just going to share a bit of a example of that was illustrated to me this week in my job role, where why I feel that talk of inclusion is unfortunately not backed up with the right actions. But so I'll explain what I'm on about with that a bit later. So we were just chatting off air about football in general because. And what was it you asked me you asked me who won the playoff final yesterday.
Yeah,
and I said
the
Sunderland.
Playoff final, yeah.
And then you asked what's their nickname, and it's the Black Cats as far as I'm aware. And
mind you, there is a link. There was a chap come up to me while we were busking in our zone, and he said, "Who do you think will win the playoffs?" I said, "I don't know really." He says, "Well, it's going to be Sheffield United because their nickname is something to do with birds. I don't know."
The Blades,
the Blade. Yeah. And then if you go back. The people who've won, then they've all got this nickname. Oh, no, they weren't that one. It was the Warsaw one. Warsaw are the somewhat or others.
Warsaw, the Saddlers.
Saddlers. So whoever they were playing had got a nickname. Their nickname was something to do with birds. Anyway, it destroyed all the myths. Yeah. But the Cats, I suppose, has got a link. Well, yeah. It would kill the birds, wouldn't it?
So it depends what...
Yeah, it's been, I think, in some instances... certainly the first two divisions have been probably the most interesting for years and years and years, what's going on. And obviously the precarious situations that various managers in the Premiership have been in all season.
Well, it's on the one, first of all, it's been refreshing, to see two different teams winning I know the other teams that have been, the Man Cities and people won't think so, but it's been refreshing to see other clubs winning stuff for a change. And then, I've never known a real, such a sort of strange final with the Europa League with Tottenham and Man United, two teams that are just completely, done underperformed or not had any sort of special good season in the league, but yet end up winning a European trophy just seems somewhat bizarre. And the manager could be on his way,
could
on
be
his
out.
way. So
Could be out, really, couldn't he? And I think the thing is as well. There was an article in the paper, and the journalist says, well, none of the fans will remember that they finished 19th or whatever it is in the Premiership. They'll only know that they won the European Cup that year. That's all they'll think about, really.
Well, this is the thing with the history, but and statistics, and in the end, it's just there's only certain things that get recorded, and all the rest is is forgotten, and that's the.
And then you have old Pep, who signs a new contract, and then ever since he signed a contract, he's just moaned about the size of his squad, and now in the paper he said, unless they trim it down to 24, I'm off.
Well,
how would you trim it from about 46 down to 24?
Well, the thing is, he's saying that now, but you have to have 20 in a match day squad now for starters.
Yeah.
And the minute they get any injuries or suspensions, all the rest of it, he'll moan that he's not, that the squad ain't big enough. So I didn't understand that, to be honest. That seemed, I get, all right, I can understand it may be easier to work with a smaller group of players, but if you need 20, unless he wants to give. The youngsters, bring the youngsters through, then fair enough. But like I said, I'll just wait. Soon enough, he'll be moaning that his squad isn't big enough. So, but no, that's another. Man City's going to be interesting. There's a lot of players there, the likes of Jack Grealish and other players who don't seem to be. He doesn't seem to be. Wanted to turn to at the moment, so is he going to look to move them on, or what's it's?
Is it? Are the reserve team? Does he have 24? And if they don't play in the first team, they don't play anyway, or is the reserve? Because we always used to look in the Sports Argus for all the reserve team scores as well.
Well, yeah. Even then, because of course, at one time it was you only had 11 on a match day, and then 12, and then even when my early days of watching football, it was only 14, 3 subs and all the rest of it. So it's just it's 2 teams virtually. You have to pick anyway now for the 20, but you've got the first team squad, and then it has the under 20, under 21. So obviously that's basically what the reserves are now. But
So there's not a proper reserve team then,
not as
really?
such. No. Senior play. I don't know whether there's a rule that they can pick, but if there's senior players that for example, need to coming back from injury or something, they play in those games sometimes. But I presume there's a rule that you can only have many senior players in there.
Yeah.
And then you're down to the next age group. I think is under 18s and. So like the old days, like you say, it used to be if you didn't play in the first team on the Saturday, you'd play in the next reserve team games, whenever that was, and there was a whole. But they've moved away from that, and it's. But the trouble is, of course, it's the old thing that there's. If the opportunity isn't there for these youngsters who, get to the age, okay, I'm too old for the under 21s now. What do I do? And then it's. So yeah, it's the same old, But I think now with money, not even if you've got the money, you can't just go throwing it around like you used to, like Chelsea did with Abramovich and City have done, and so they're having to sort of do things a bit differently, which it's hopefully good for the game. And
it'll certainly be interesting over this, because I didn't even realise there's 2 summer windows as well. Isn't there? There's an early window. And then one that stretches almost into September, isn't there?
Well, it's all. I can't remember exactly because it's weird because all the different leagues finish at different times. So I don't know whether there must be a date. I think it's June the 1st that the transfer opens again.
Yeah.
And then it does just run all the way to September. So but with players being on holiday and all that, nothing much happens for a few weeks, and then it all sort of. Only really July it normally starts to kick into gear, but
mind you, that's another thing this year. And half of the big teams go off to the World, wherever it is, Club Championship with 48 teams, and they get back just in time for pre-season training.
Well, see, but that makes absolutely no
sense.
They go on about too many games, and then all the powers that be keep doing is creating more. And
Yeah.
I mean, the Club World Cup was just a small tournament basically with the winners of the European Cup Champions League, whichever you choose to call it, from Europe, and then the South Americans and the Asia Trophy. There's one more that escapes me now. Africa, I presume, must be Africa Cup of Nations, I think. Not the Africa Cup of Nations, that's international. But yeah, but all the continents basically.
Yeah.
And so it was just a short tournament, and so how can you go from that to this humongous affair? How, I don't know. It just seems,
Well, it's just a money grabbing thing.
And then of course next year you've got the real World Cup.
Oh God, with millions of teams in it now.
So you've got these players who basically are, yes, I know they're well paid and all the rest of it, but they're still not really going to get much of a break for 2 years or something. So but
something I found interesting the other day, because Tuchel named his squad and he's named Tony in. And he said, yeah, but he scored 26 goals over in Saudi Arabia. Yeah, but it's like playing in the third division, isn't it?
I don't think.
And he says, I haven't been up. I did pencil in my diary to go and watch him, but I haven't been able to go. So I'm just brought him in the squad so I can have a look at him. It just seems a complete waste of a space.
Well, it doesn't send the right message. Picking somebody you haven't even watched for a start. It's not as if there isn't any other options, and why, again, why not? Again, I know it would the financial awards, but he made the choice to go and play in that league.
What's the guy Farrell, who went to France, knowing full well that he wouldn't be picked for the England rugby squad. Well, if that happens, that should be the same in football. If you go off in search of your money and further your career, then you shouldn't play for your country.
Well, yeah, but like you say, would you? There'll be English players who have banged in a load of goals in the League One and League Two, but they're not going to get picked.
No.
So why it seems a very odd one and
strange.
But
it'd be interesting to see now how he fares when he's had a few games under his belt.
Yeah, it'd be. Well, as always, time will tell. And to be honest, I mean, yes, they qualify and all the rest of it, but it's always the same. We win the qualifying groups at a canter, and everybody's we're great and everything, and then we come to the tournament, and all of a sudden it's a whole different ball game. But we'll see what goes on. But yeah, we're talking of foreign ventures. So, like I say,
Italia. Where were you based then?
We stayed in Verona. Because we needed a base in sort of northern Italy to be. Bologna would have been ideal, but we for reasons we were meeting up with a friend over there who was closer to Verona, so and they said they'd drive us, so we stayed in Verona.
So you went to the posh part then. The northern part.
Well, yeah. Well, I don't know. I haven't experienced the rest of it yet, so I'll take your word for it.
We used to go with a chap who was born in Benevento, which is the Naples Bay area, and if he went up north, he would speak English because it was a bit like us. There's the dialects and the difference in speech, and they were looked down upon by the northern Italians because they came from the Naples Bay area. So he always used to speak. He'd speak Italian around Naples, but not when you went up north.
Well, it's interesting as well because when we were exploring Verona, I'd like to tune into do a bus tour, and listen to the audio guide and pick up the history and whatever. Because obviously I can't look at the sites, but absorb the information. And it's interesting because just north of Verona is where the Dolomites are, and that used to be Austrian territory. So historically, there is a lot of still Austrian from the Ottoman Empire, a lot of legacy that a lot of people there, I think, don't sort of see themselves as Italian so much. So there's history everywhere you look in terms of territory that's been passed around over the years and divided up, and so it's quite an interesting part of the country, I think, in that respect. But Verona, I'd recommend it. It's a nice place, easy to get around, and lots of interesting historical things to learn about. It turns out, by the way, if you want to visit Juliet's house and then I'd suggest either turning up very early in the morning, or because the I mean, the queues were just insane, and then it was so and so how long people were prepared to wait just to look at the balcony and whatever. I don't know, but yes, that was quite an interesting. And another thing that I found really bizarre was the on the audio guide they reckon that people write to Juliet from all over the world asking her for advice on there, but then there's people replying. I'm thinking, what? How on earth does? I mean, what?
Were you there when the Pope passed away? Or?
No, it was no, it was just that we were there when they were doing the electing the next one, but
right,
obviously miles away from Rome. So
yeah.
but it was interesting 'cause I didn't know whether that. I asked someone when we were there, do the Italians have a I don't know a holiday or a day of mourning, whatever you want to call it, when the Pope passes, and they didn't. It was just so yeah, it wasn't very. You wouldn't really have known that was going on. There was nothing really going on because it. So it was. But no, it was. It's obviously a very. But again, with the, I think there's unlike a lot of countries, there is definitely still a strong Catholic, influence there or feeling there. So, but like I say, it'd be interesting to see how if it's still as significant to all of them, or was it still only significant to some, or how it all works out. But no, yeah, it was interesting.
What impressed you the most then?
Well, in Verona.
Well, about Italy, really, I suppose.
Well, funny because I sort of, within a sort of a day or two, because I've been to Spain a fair few times, over, and I said to someone, this sounds mad because I've only been here 5 minutes, but I sort of get I don't know, they just seem to be a bit more of more welcoming than the Spanish somehow.
Yeah.
I couldn't really put my finger on it, but it was just, but no, the food obviously really good. Pasta and pizza fans, obviously it's just it's a heavenly place for all that stuff, and
the ice cream's pretty good.
Yeah, I did. I did have ice cream once actually. Yeah, and so if you like your food, then it's you could fill your boots there. So and like I say, the people and the architecture was good, and then so I said the main reason was going to visit the car factories. So with and again, with these things, I'm always a little bit sort of. I'd like to do them, but I think, well, how much am I really going to get out of them? So when the friend we went with recommended that we booked Ferrari, but don't worry about Lamborghini. We can just turn up there. So with Ferrari, you've got the museum, which you have to book or get a ticket for at least, and then it's weird because the factory. Well, they call it a factory tour, but you don't get to actually go in the factory. All they do is drive you around in a bus round the grounds, so around Ferrari town, basically, which is what it is. You've got the test track and the factory and all the various buildings, but they only do that twice a day. So of course, if you don't book it, you run the risk of not being able to get on it. So, so the museum and I also asked when I made the booking, said I said I'm blind. Would there be any opportunities to touch things? And they said yes, no problem. So I was thinking, okay, good. But when we got there, they then were less keen, shall we say? But then, and took a bit of persuading. But thankfully, in the end, they were okay. So I was able to have a feel of the cars, and then unfortunately, like, which I sort of knew, but the ride on the bus around the factory, there wasn't really much I could get from that, unfortunately. I mean, could listen to all the information being given to us by the guide, but so I think that could be done better. I don't really see why because they don't let you take photographs or anything, or
Really?
get out the bus or anything. So it all seems a bit over the top for what there's nothing top secret going on. It's nothing. So that was I think they could do that better really for people. But
what were the provisions like in terms of how you would cope in comparison to here? Were they more aware of people with disabilities or stuff like that, or
I don't think I don't think it was any different really. Like I say, there was the initial opposition to being able to touch things at the so that's pretty much the same here. So no, I wouldn't say it was any different. And then but then the disappointment was Lamborghini was unfortunately a real letdown because they wouldn't budge on the being able to touch things. I don't know whether that was a shame in the end. It didn't really, and the factory tours were all booked up, so we didn't get to go there. You do actually go around the factory, but we couldn't get a space on one of the tours. So if you go, then I'll definitely suggest do book your place on the tour in advance. But so again, that was a shame that they were not willing to relent on the being able to touch things policy. But yeah, apart from that, it was it was
good experience.
Took in what you can, and and it was good. But then a warning for anyone that hasn't done it yet. Going through security at Birmingham Airport now, they've changed the security scanner. So rather than just having to walk straight and you walk through the sort of archway between the metal detectors, you now have to stand in a certain position, to put your feet in a certain place on this thing and look forward and put your arms in a certain position and basically stand still while you're scanned. So of course that was fun for me, trying to get into the right position. And so yeah, that's not the easiest things for blind people, unfortunately. But there we go. Yeah, so there was the car factory experience, and also made a trip to Lake Garda, which isn't far from Verona. So, and again, I thought, well, it's all about the Italian lakes are all about the views and things, but I thought, it's go there, see what it does. And so we went there and just had a sort of walk around the lake. Well, not around the lake's too big, but sort of by the lake, and then we sat having a coffee in this cafe, sort of overlooking the lake. Then all of a sudden the heavens opened, and this absolute thunder and everything. So I said, well, I won't be able to remember the view, but I'll certainly remember this storm. It was absolutely ridiculous rain. But like I said, you got the Romeo and Juliet's, Juliet's house, they call it so. But and then if you like your wine, it's always the Verona's very much proud of their wine and their history there. I completely forgot really that they. I haven't paid much attention to Italian football closely for a while, but Verona actually are in Serie A, so and their stadium holds about 40,000, which I didn't realise. So they are quite one of the top footballing clubs in the country as well. And and as usual, you've got lots of and it's quite funny really, because they built even the paving slabs they made out of marble, because it's just so readily available. So these slabs have been down for hundreds or maybe thousands of years, but the thing is, they're in better nick than half the pavements you walk on, in this country.
But they don't have as many potholes.
No, exactly. So if that's the way to do it, then yes, big investment initially, but if they last longer, then it's and again, it kind of had a bit of as a lot of these cities do, a mix of the old and the new, where the new buildings have come up, but the sort of heart and the centre of the city still as it was, with the narrow streets. And
do you get a sense of space through, I don't know, texture or smell or how do you take in the surroundings?
Well, I think the term that people like to use is echolocation, but it's just from talking from my point of view, as I find it, you can tell when a space is, when you're in open space, or if you're in a narrow, if you've got buildings both sides of you and it's quite a narrow space. It's just down to the sound and the effect it has on it, and and you can if there's if you find yourself suddenly in quite lots of people fairly close to you, then that tells you that it's quite narrow or whatever, or if people are spread out. And So yeah, it just sounds that you pick up on. It just a bit like, I suppose, if you go through a tunnel or whatever, or in your car, and this if you it's the same thing really, that the sound changes depending on what's around you and where you are. But
It's
yeah.
interesting, the concept of space in a different way, really, isn't it?
Well, again, it goes back to, as I've talked about before, people say about, you must have really good hearing and this and whatever, and it's just a case of, if your eyes aren't telling you anything, then the next thing your body turns to is what can you hear, and that's the and if you can hear, if you, I mean, for argument's sake, if you get into your understairs cupboard at home or something, and close the door, and just get listen to how that sounds, and then alternatively, the different sounds. So then, if you're then in a bigger room like your kitchen or somewhere, then if you tune into it, you'll realise that it does sound different, even though there's not a particular noise going on, but just just the feel and the and the amount of air there is around you, I suppose, that that you tune into, and then, like I say, the echolocation comes from, if you're walking, for example, then your footstep as you approach, like if I can tell if I'm approaching a, a I don't know, say a building or a wall, if when the sound of my footsteps bounces off it, basically. It's not an exact science and doesn't always work, but it's just little things like that, and it's not, you might not be, you're never exactly sure, but you just work with what you can pick up, and but yeah, and to be honest, it's something that it's so hard to explain, because you just you're just feeling and listening to whatever you can, whereas there's not a exact method or science to it. It's just working with what you got, and
I suppose like
so
a sixth sense, isn't it? You get
yeah. Well, I don't know. They say, don't they? Like, some people, you can feel. Sometimes you can tell when someone's coming up behind you or something like that, or a bit like that, I suppose, in the wild. Animals have to develop a sixth sense of what's around them, because if they're being hunted or whatever, and this, that, and the other. So it's that kind of awareness, and I just think, I guess that's the word, awareness. I just think that, because when people when you can see, again, your eyes just tell you so much without even having to think about it or particularly process it. Whereas if you're trying to pick things up when you can't see it, it's kind of you have to figure it out, because it's not obvious all the time, and you have to figure out, okay, what was that? Where was that coming from? What's going on here? And it's that always having to be aware of. You have to be aware of, because you don't even know what's in front of you, let alone behind you and to the side. And so it's, so yeah, it's about being more aware of what's around you, and trying to think about, and having to think about it more and put the pieces together, I guess. Yeah, so recommend Italy and Verona. Like I said, and I hope to go and explore more of it in the near future. So I'll let you know how all that pans out. But yeah, to finish off, well, for the last few minutes, I just wanted to sort of bring, highlight an example of why I think, well, certainly me and people I talk to with disabilities feel that although there's a lot of talk about the importance of including people, or diversity, or whatever term you wish to use these days, there seems to, sadly, more often than not, it gets shown up as being just words and talk, and focusing on areas where there isn't a physical barrier preventing people from being included, or doing what they want to do, and such as, if you can't walk, you can't walk. That's not something you can do one day and not the next, or you might be able to, or some people can walk for a short while, but if you're confined to a wheelchair and you haven't got the option of walking, then that's you're then restricted to places you can access if they're not set up correctly, and then likewise if you are deaf, then you can't if the right things aren't put in place in order for you to communicate or understand what's being said, then you're excluded from that, from even a simple conversation. And then as for if you're blind, if there's certain things that we can't, if you're totally, yes, some people can put glasses on or move a bit closer to whatever they need to look at, and that solves the problem. But if you've got no vision, then there is nothing you can do to easily address that. So it has to be done. So people have to be aware and conscious enough to make things accessible for you. And so this was highlighted to me again on one of the days this week at work, where we had an office shut down for a couple of hours, and where they take the opportunity to bring you up to date and tell you about this, that, and the other, and what their plans are, and da-da-da. And for the best part of half an hour to 45 minutes, we had someone speaking to us about the importance of being included and inclusivity and all these fancy words that get thrown around, and what they were doing to make sure, or they wanted to do to improve that, and blah, 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 blah. And then, and then at the end of all of that, they then had a quiz for the us to do in our teams, and it was it started off when it became apparent that the first question was regarding identifying people. I think it was from a photo, and I thought, okay, well, that's me out. but I assumed that because I've sat in quizzes before where there's been a picture round or a picture question or something, and you take it, you think, all right, move on. But then the next one comes, okay, identify the household object or something. I was like, so you're kidding, aren't you? And I was like, I don't believe this. I've just listened to all of that, and then you've just you've come up with something which completely excludes me as a blind person.
Yeah.
And I said to, but the funny thing, I don't know how it happened now, but the funny thing was, so I'm sitting there, obviously just utterly, quietly fuming, really, thinking, this just sums up that people just don't understand the difference in what they say and what they need to do.
Be done, yeah.
But then I heard some people, as people do, sort of guessing or chit chat about, oh, who's that, and they mentioned and they said, oh, that's Willie Rushton and Barry Cryer, and who were the other two, and they did a radio show, and I went, I know that. I'm sorry, I haven't a clue. and so that and then there was another one. They said, the sailors or something. I said, if it's a radio show, I guess it was the Navy Lark. And lo and behold, they were right.
So, blimey! So
I still managed to get two, even without being able to see the pictures. But
did anybody make reference after, or?
Well, not really, no. Because
I suppose because you won.
Well, we didn't. No, we didn't win actually.
Oh, you didn't win.
But that's the thing, it kind of made me. I sent a message to my team leader and just said, surely you don't need me to point out that this is just utterly excluding me from from this. And he said, no, I've sent a message to whoever organised it and said blah blah blah. But I'm thinking, but why does it need pointing out that a blind person can't join in with a picture quiz? And so it just it's only a small example. In the end, it doesn't matter. It was a bit of fun, but the point of this is the problem. All this talk and all this, all these promises, or what can we do to make things better? Da, 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 da. In the end, it's not. They miss the point so often, and with what they do, and it's just so aggravating.
It's like you saying, well, we'll have a round where everybody's got to close their eyes, and we've got to, guess this from some, and they'd go, oh no, we can't do that.
Yeah, well, and that's kind of the point, isn't it? And again, if they want to, rather than, I think people like so many things, they switch off to, unless it directly affects them, unless they've got a physical disability, then it's just something else. It's just more spiel from and people don't tune into it. If you put people best you can in that situation, i.e., take their sight away,
Yeah.
take their hearing away, then that they have no choice but to think about it. And that's the thing, and that's how you get the message across to people, not just by sitting, talking at them and all this, that, and the other. And that's the difference between a physical barrier and people who feel like they're being excluded because of what colour they may be, what sexuality they may be, what sex they may be, all these things. In the end, 9 times out of 10, these people are still managing to do whatever it is they want to do, and if they yes, there will sadly always be pockets of prejudice in the world, but that doesn't. You can still, by and large, do as you wish and lead the life you want to lead. Because frankly, no one. Why is anybody going to know? What your sexuality is unless you tell them. Why is anybody? We all work with people from all backgrounds, all skin colours these days. Yes, there will always be the minority that that find that to be an issue, but by and large, it isn't for most people. They don't care what you look like, what you how you speak, how you look, as long as you don't do bad things to them,
Yeah, and as long as you do your job
and you do what you're expected to do,
fine,
and you play your part and do everything right, and that's that's the majority of people, I believe. But when it comes to I can go into work, and as I've mentioned before, and as happened before, someone's messed around with the computer system and they've tweaked it. May all look great visually, but absolutely useless for screen readers, and that straight away then is me stopped from doing my job.
Yeah.
And
I mean, it's bad enough here when I come in the morning and I know for a fact that somebody has changed the settings on something and all that. So, and I can see that they've changed the settings.
try and figure it out.
But if you came in, you think, well, blimey, what's going on here? There's no way you'd ever find out what had happened, really.
No, and that's the thing. And again, it's one of the things I always talk about is, as a sighted person, you can, if there is something unexpected, you can figure it out or figure it out easier. Whereas if you don't know, if something doesn't go to plan or isn't as you expect to find it when you can't see, it can be really difficult, if not impossible, to figure out what the heck do I do here. And that's the, and that's the difference between a physical barrier, which needs to be removed or not put there in the first place, to, things that are just emotions or, they're not physical things. They're just part of people's identity or part of people's, emotional makeup, but they don't physically stop them, going about their business, as it were. It's more about other people's attitude to them, which, like I say, you can, it's never, you can talk about and whatever, but in the end, those people's attitude doesn't stop you doing what you want to do. That's just, it's just, but when something physically prevents you going about your business or being the same as other people and doing what other people are doing, even though in your head you can do something as well as them, but you're prevented from, because the people who have the ability to take the barriers away just don't either seem to be aware of them or think that they're doing all right because they're ticking other boxes, but ignoring that one because it's more difficult. But it's. I'll be interested to know if anybody else has come across a similar example in any situation. But I just thought that was really, because I doubt myself. I think, obviously just me who thinks this, and
and then you feel conscious that you're thinking, oh, I've got to ask them to do this now.
Yeah, and you get tired of it. And again, I'm the sort of person, for better or for worse, I don't like making a fuss. I don't like drawing attention to myself. I don't want to be constantly on at people. But then in the end, it's, and
It's a necessity.
Well, yeah, and I feel guilty for, I'm the sort of person that always starts off with sorry to disturb and this, that, the other. But in the end, you think,
Well, you shouldn't be apologising, should you?
no, and
Really?
as I've got older, I have got more sort of resilient. I thought, well, you know what, I'm telling them about a problem, and that's all I'm doing. I'm not saying, but I don't know. I just don't know how
What the answer is?
what we get.
We've got about 30 seconds.
Oh, we cracked on, right?
Yeah, we've cracked on. So
All right.
if somebody wants to contact you,
Yeah, so SimonHill_6 @hotmail.com, or you can leave a comment on the podcast page, the Blind Insight podcast. And we'll reconvene in a few weeks.